Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be taking a look at the OWCS Korea Stage 2 rosters. We got a whole bunch of them here, 8 teams competing for the Korea main event spot, or the Asia main event spot. Lots of familiar faces, lots of familiar teams, not as much turnover here as there was in the Pacific region, though there has been some, of course, but very, very interesting. So you can pull up the teams. You can see we have Team Falcons, Crazy Raccoon, Zeta Division, Fnatic, Haejokdan, Vesta Esports Crew, Pokerface, and Old Ocean. So let's jump in. Like I said, I already talked about the Asia Pacific region. So if you haven't seen that yet, it'll be linked in the description and at the cards and at the end of this video. But you don't need to watch it before this one, but I did put it out. Let's jump in and let's talk about these Korean rosters, because oh boy, do we have some fun in store. Starting from the top, we have Team Falcons. They were the team that technically won Asia Stage 1 in earlier this year. However, they did not win they won Korea Stage 1, but they did not win Asia, which was won by Crazy Raccoon. Team Falcons really has been second fiddle in Korea for pretty much the entirety of this year, outside of the one game that they won here to win Stage 1 before. But really good roster. They made one change coming into this tournament, but they still have proper Stalker on damage with the addition of Happy in that hit scan role. They have Smurf and Hanbin on the tanks, and Chio Fielder and Sir Majed on the supports. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you should know this team already quite well. This is a Korean super team. They got second in the first major tournament of the year, losing to Crazy Raccoon in that one. And like I said, the only major addition they made in this is adding Happy to this team, and I love this change. I think this is a great addition. One of my biggest criticisms of this Falcons roster, I think that the coaching has been kind of middling, and it has been kind of problematic. And part of my issue with this, and it's part of the reason why I think Proper being tied to Krusty for the entirety of his upper-level career has been pretty bad and a kind of a problem, is I just think that Proper does not get put into the positions to succeed for a player of his caliber. I was a Proper hater for a while. I'm not even going to lie to you. I was so sick of the Proper talk in 2022. He was anointed like the greatest player of all time, and I get very happy when he loses because I just think it's funny to see people go like, oh, but Proper, whatever. Anyway, but what I will say about Proper, where I do think that Proper needs to be put in better positions to succeed, is the fact that Proper is a very flexible player. He can play a lot of things. He has a very good Widow, he has a very good Tracer, a very good Genji, just to name a few heroes. But the problem with the way this team was before and the way the Shock were the past couple of years is that they're always making Proper be the guy flexing onto different heroes, and they're always making the person who he's playing with play to their comfort more, and they're moving Proper around. And I think that that is just the wrong way to use Proper as a player. Proper is a phenomenal player. Yes, he can play a lot of heroes, and he's super flexible, and that's what makes him as good as he is. But if Tracer is the carry hero in a comp, Proper should be on the Tracer. I love Stalker. Stalker's a great Tracer player. If Tracer is the carry hero, Proper should be playing it because he is a carry player. If Genji is your carry hero, Proper should be playing it, right? And so when you have comps where Stalker is playing the Tracer and Proper's playing the Widow, for example, it doesn't work as well. You need Proper on the highest impact damage hero that you have because that's who he is as a player. I think bringing in Happy is a great addition because now it takes a lot of that pressure off of Proper to have to always be the guy flexing and playing the different things. You're making him play a whole bunch of different heroes to fit around what Stalker can play, as opposed to what I think you should be doing, which is plugging Stalker and Happy in around what Proper is very, very good at, and allowing Proper to play his best roles all the time, as opposed to kind of switching between he and Stalker. Obviously, you have to deal with things like egos and personalities and players wanting to play, but that's my take on this. That's my sense on this. Obviously, This team is still very, very good even without Happy. I think the addition of Happy just makes it now that they're a little bit more consistently dominant, especially because when you're dealing with Crazy Raccoon and they have the best hit scan player in the world, and you have a hit scan player who's good but is not an elite dedicated hit scan player, and if you're losing those hit scan duels, you're just never going to actually catch them if you're playing behind the fiddle like that. And I think that this is why adding Happy is a great move. Obviously, they have depth everywhere in this roster. They have an extra tank player. They have 3 support players. So it's a team that I think should be very, very good. I think they've underperformed a bit, but they're getting typically like second in tournaments. And it's just the fact that they're losing to this Crazy Raccoon roster that is absolutely incredible. So let's talk about them and their team. You have Lip and Heesang on your damage duo. You have Junbin Max as your tanks, and Chorong and Shu as your supports. This team has figured everything out. They are unbelievably dominant. They have won pretty much everything. They won the Asia main event in Stage 1. They won the Major for OWCS Stage 1, so the first LAN tournament. And they also just recently won Esports World Cup. So this Crazy Raccoon roster is on top of the world, right? They have arguably the best DPS player in the world with Lip. Sorry, Proper, but Lip has been performing incredibly. And I think what this team has done very well, and I think it's really impressive, is you have some veteran guys like Lip and Shu who have been around for years at this point in time, right? Like Shu joined the Overwatch League in 2019, Lip in 2020. These are players who have been unbelievable for long periods of time. But then you have Junbin and Max and Heesang and Chorong who are still kind of young. Heesang, Junbin, Max were rookies in 2023. Chorong, a rookie in 2022. And they have been able to combine really good young talent with some really good veteran leaders who are still at the top of their game. And part of that, to me, is what I think helps Crazy Raccoon a little bit more than Falcons. Because, yes, like Falcons has Chio and Fielder, who are still pretty young. Fielder's been around since 2020, so he's a veteran guy. And Proper, you know, he joined the league in 2022 alongside Stalker as well. But then you have Happy and Smurf and Hanbin, who have been around for a while. They are older guys. They're veterans. They've won. You know, like, there's certainly there's a different fire in some of these players where you have some veterans who've won. They're playing. They don't have that same kind of desire to get that title because they've already done it. You know, Smurf's won twice already. Hanbin has a title under his belt. What do you care about as much? You know, like, you've been really good. You've been top of the game. You're still an absolutely really dominant and strong player, but there's definitely a different motivation when you get to this point in your career, whereas Heesang, Junbin, Max, those 3 in particular, they spent the entirety of 2023 being doubted. People were like, these guys aren't actually that good, right? Like, they've been disappointing. They haven't lived up to the expectations we had for them. So they come in this year and they are hungry and they have a fire under their hearts, right? And they are really going, and a fire in their hearts, I guess. And they've been really, really good this year. I still think they're the favorite to win this region until anything shows me otherwise, because I just think they are that good of a team, and I think they have been unreal so far this year. And they're, like, arguably they have the best player in every role in the league. Best hit scan player, best flex DPS player, arguably, the best tank duo, arguably, the best 2 supports, arguably. At the very least, they're top 3 in everything. And it's really been incredible to watch this team, and they've been so good and so dominant. No real shock to me. They've been the top team in Korea and the world so far this year. Next, we have Zeta Division. This team, of course, formerly from The Gamer. This team has a roster of Flora and ATVI for the damage duo, Bernard and Heesung on the tanks, and Violet and Finn for their supports. They did have Fearless with them in the Esports World Cup, but he no longer on the team. Now they have Heesung. They also had Bellasaria on this team in the past. I think this is still probably the 3rd best team in the region. I think they've been relatively consistent. They've been pretty dominant in a lot of their games. I think they have one of the top damage duos in the league with Flora and ATVI. They're still doing a very good job. I think Bernard, still a very good off-tank player. Heesung, not a main tank player, which does give me a bit of concern. They don't have someone to really play like the Winston really heavily. As far as I'm aware, Heesung, that's not his role. He plays a lot of the stuff like Sigma or Diva, so we'll see. Bernard has definitely been picking up some other stuff, but he's also absolutely more known for his play on off-tank heroes like Sigma and Diva and Zarya. So an interesting thing there. It's maybe their only position that I'm a little concerned about them. They have Violet and Finn, a very good support line, though, of course, Violet did have one of the worst Ajaxes of all time recently, so, that's something to make note of. But I still think this team is very good. They should be near the top. Only one change since Stage 1, which is Heesung instead of Belisria/Fearless. So I still think they're in a good position. I still think they should be pretty solid, so no real concerns for me over this team. Next is Fnatic, formerly the Yeti roster, though there have been quite a few changes to this roster as well. Knife, Viper, and Checkmate are the damage players for this team. You have Donghak and Attack for the tanks, and Lee Jae-gon and Izayaki. So, Knife and Viper, though I believe Viper is now LFT. I don't know if he is going to be on this team going forward, which is an interesting thing. And Checkmate, who was formerly on Rock Esports playing in the EMEA region, now is back in Korea on this Fnatic roster. That is also where Izayaki was playing. He and Lee Jae-gon had been separated when Lee Jae-gon had gone back to play for the Runaway reunion roster, I guess. But now that support line comes back together here with Fnatic, so a more veteran support line, when this team's support line in the first stage was very, very young. And then they had Donghak already on the roster. They had Attack as kind of an off-tank player to help round out some of their other tanks. This team should also still be pretty good. I still think this team should be a top 4 potential team. I still think the top 4 teams from the first stage look to be the top 4 teams in the stage. My only concern with Fnatic is that they did not perform as well as I expected them to at the Esports World Cup. To be fair, I didn't watch the Esports World Cup, so maybe they looked better than the scores said, because I didn't care about the Esports World Cup. But that's the only thing that I'm a little hesitant on, is that I thought they would have performed somewhat better, especially if they don't have Viper going forward. That's another decision that makes me pause again. But I still think they have a very solid roster. And you look around the Korea region, obviously there's a lot of really good teams, but this is a team that really did pop off. Their young talent was very good. Knife in particular was unreal. And Donghak had a great year. So you get a little more of that veteran presence now in that support line, which I think helps. Obviously, Stage 1, they had Bliss and Irony in their support line, and not bad players, but certainly now you have a bit more veteran and kind of well-known, strong players there. You have a good coaching staff with Fate and Fleta, so all in all, pretty solid roster. And I think there's quite a lot of positive things going on here. I still think they should be pretty good. So I'm not too concerned about them. I still think they're probably the 4th best team here, though it's not as clear-cut as I think it was at times in Stage 1. Next, we have the roster of Haejokdan, which is largely the core of that former Runaway roster that was in Stage 1. So you have Zest, Sonjun, and Prophet. Obviously, this is, of course, I'll say it just in case, but this is Little P Prophet. Zest and Prophet were playing together on that Runaway roster. In Stage 1, they bring in Sonjun, who I believe recently was playing for Timeless and TSM. So now here with this roster, they have Mag remaining as their solo tank, and then they have a brand new support line of Vindame and Lee Soo-min, who I actually don't know where these two were recently. They may not have been on anything. Vindame hasn't played since the Dynasty. Lee Soo-min, I think, was on SPG. Yes, he was on SPG for the first stage. So this is a team that I think this is probably my next best team in this group. Interesting that we're in this order. But this team, I think, is pretty solid. I think they have a lot of good pieces. That Runaway roster had some okay moments in the first first stage that did disappoint a bit. New support line, maybe things are a little bit more solid here. They have a little bit more depth around them, so certainly a potential for this team to still be pretty good, but I don't feel as good about them as I do the other four, especially because the other four teams, Team Falcons, Crazy Raccoon, Zeta Division, Fnatic, have been playing and scrimming against teams from other parts of the world. They had the advantage of getting to play in Esports World Cup, which just meant that their season didn't end as immediately as some of these other teams did. So they've still been grinding. They've been presumably in a bit more. They've been in form more as of late, which gives me more hope for them as well. So yeah, I think this team is one of the few that could possibly strike up, and there's one more I'll talk about that I think has what it takes, but I think they're probably looking in that kind of 5-6 range if I had to take a guess for where I think this team will be. Next is Vesta Esports Crew. This team did compete largely with the same roster, a couple changes, but this is largely the same roster as the one that competed in the first stage. You have Dart and Minute on damage, they're returning. You have Gurum and Farmer on tank, so Gurum returns with the addition of Farmer, and then they have a new support duo with Lego and Jinsung. This team was not good in Stage 1. I don't even remember if they won a game. They didn't. They actually not only did not win a game, they didn't win a map in the first stage. They were definitively bad. Like, they were really, really bad. And it's quite depressing how bad this team was. So I don't expect them to be significantly better with the changes they've made to this roster. I still think this team is not going to be really pushing the top of this group. It's good to see that they're able to they're able to consistently get themselves into this field of top 8, top 9 teams. That's a really positive sign for this team. Like, they are talented. They have the means to get into this top 8, top 9 kind of category here. But they just haven't been able to show anything of really great level once they actually made it to this point. So I don't really have a lot of hope in them being all of a sudden a significantly better team than they were last time we saw them. So I'm going to give the edge to the rest of the field again. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this team has had a lot of time to improve. Maybe they'll look better. Next is Pokerface. This roster has undergone some changes. They've always had a pretty big roster, so it's kind of hard to fully look at all of them. But their DPS line, they changed quite a bit. Proud is the only one returning, but Choi Se-won and Jae-woo come into this team. Choi Se-won was on the Genesis roster last stage, who were very disappointing. That should have been better, but just didn't really do what you would have wanted to see. And Jae-woo actually was on Runaway for a little while. I didn't realize that. Interesting. Just wasn't playing? I don't know. But was there. So that's interesting. I don't know much about Jae-woo. I don't know what heroes Jae-woo's most known for. I think they're a flex DPS player, which helps. But, Choi Se-won is really good, and I expect to take up that role for the most part, while Proud covers the hit scan role. Then you have Jasmine and Belis Rhea as your tanks. So Jasmine returning from Stage 1, Belis Rhea coming over from Zeta Division for Stage 2. And then you have Simple, Karu, and Fixa as your supports. Simple, the only one returning here. Fixa, formerly, of course, a Philadelphia Fusion / Soul Infernal player. And now here with this team. And then you have Karu, plays that flex support role. Simple is the most likely primary flex support player, however, alongside Fix's main support. I like this team. This is my other potential pick to break that top 4. I think, to me, Fnatic is vulnerable. I think Zeta Division and Fnatic are both vulnerable. I think less so Zeta Division than Fnatic. I think Falcons and Crazy Raccoon are still top 2. I think this Pokerface roster has the players in the most important roles. I think that they could certainly make a name for themselves. They could certainly get up and really find some success here. I like this team quite a bit, so I think that they're in a decent spot. I think, once again, they're most likely in that 5-6 range. I think that's what this team is, but, you know, I could be wrong. This team could certainly surprise me and certainly have a really good result that gets them up to that, you know, winning position. But right now, I would put them here still in that kind of 5-6 range. Final team is Old Ocean. This team is wild. They have a DPS line of Becky, Probe, and Taejong. Becky, like I mentioned before, was on Pokerface in Stage 1, so he moves over here. Taejong is a player who actually was more recently in NA, playing with Pirates and Pajamas. Moves over here, plays that flex DPS role mostly. And then Probe, or Proby, is the hit scan player for this team. So probably mostly be Becky and Probe, or Proby, playing, but I suppose only time will tell at this point. That would be my expectation, though. They have the tanks of Kalios and Ruler. Kalios also was on that Genesis team that was just very, very disappointing in Stage 1. And Ruler comes in as another off-tank player, which is an interesting thing here as well. Another double off-tank team here. And then for their supports, they have Faith and Ryu Jae Hong, which, I mean, wow. Faith moves over from Pokerface to come to this team and plays alongside Ryu Jae Hong, you know, the guy who's been like, you know, who was like one of the biggest players in the history of Overwatch and then kind of disappeared for a while or just stopped playing for a while and now is back as the flex support for this team. I mean, look, shout out. You know what? Shout out to him for making it here, getting his team here, being a part of this team as they make their way going forward. I think it's cool to see. I don't think this team is going to be very good. I think they might be a little better than Vesta, but I think those two teams are looking to be the bottom level. No offense to Ryu Jae Hong. I don't think he's at the level that he was back in his prime. And I think there's a lot of... There is definitely some concern from me about how much he's going to be able to kind of continue to play at that high level. But he's a legend, you know. He's one of the all-time greats. I mean, he's in his 30s, which isn't like old, but like for esports, that's old. You know, being in your 30s in esports, that's something, you know. So shout out to him for being here on this team. But I just think this team, especially, like, I like Kalios. I don't love Kalios. I don't think he's an all-time great. So I have some concerns there. And then I like their DPS, but I don't think they have like exceptional players at any real point anywhere in this roster. So I think they'll be okay, but like I said, I think they probably finish here in that 7-8 range. So three teams are going to advance out of this group automatically. I'm going to take Falcons, Raccoon, and Zeta Division, and then I think Fnatic's still 4. I think it's the same top 4, most likely, with maybe a surprising Heijokdan or Pokerface, or both of them kind of sneaking in. But certainly, I think Crazy Raccoon and Team Falcons are your 1 and 2. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on Korea. Let me know your thoughts on these teams in the comments down below. Do you agree with my assessments? Do you disagree with my assessments? Is there a team you think is better than I'm giving them credit for? Anything like that, I'd love to hear from you down below. But that is all for today. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing. Your support does help out a lot with the channel. I got a Japan video coming out soon. We're getting close to that one, so within the next couple of days, I'll have Japan up. But that's going to be all for me for today. Thank you all once again, as I said, Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.